We all like to think we are good at certain things, above average in certain areas. Most of us are at some things. But the truth is, you are likely wrong about how good or bad you are at many things. It is likely that you both over and underestimate your actual abilities in numerous areas of life. And the areas and the degree to which you're wrong would probably surprise you. In a 1999 study, psychologists David Dunning and Justin Kruger discovered a phenomenon that would be coined the Dunning-Kruger effect. After giving participants of the study various tests that assessed their abilities in humor, logical reasoning, and grammar, the participants were then asked to self-assess their performance in relation to their peers in the study. Dunning and Kruger found that people who performed poorly on the tests tended to believe that they did far better than they actually did, while those who performed well tended to misperceive their performance in relation to the average of their peers. In other words, the study would discover the cognitive bias where people who are less knowledgeable or experienced in an area tend to believe that they are much more competent in that area than they actually are. And those who are experienced and knowledgeable in an area tend to underestimate or doubt their abilities. These cognitive biases are the Dunning-Kruger effect. In other words, they don't know enough to know what they do not know. If you're incompetent, you can't know you're incompetent. On the flip side, people with more knowledge and experience in an area are aware of the complexity, vastness, and difficulty involved in being right or successful, and thus they are likely to be more doubtful of their abilities. They also tend to think that others are more capable in the area than what is actually the case, and so they are also more likely to underestimate themselves when ranked against others. This phenomenon can be fairly unsettling on the individual scale, to know that you don't know what you don't know. Of course, you already knew that. But the degree to which you're unaware and the areas that you might have such oversights, where you might otherwise feel pretty confident, can be disconcerting. But it's even more unsettling when considered on the collective, societal scale. What's curious is that, in many cases, incompetence does not leave people disoriented, perplexed, or cautious. Instead, the incompetent are often blessed with an inappropriate confidence, buoyed by something that feels to them like knowledge, said Dunning. Partly as a result of the Dunning-Kruger effect, people who are not qualified to speak on certain subjects are still some of the most confident and loudest who do. More qualified individuals, rather, tend to be less loud and less simplistic, and instead, more thoughtful and cautious. And for exceptionally high-level experts, since they tend to misperceive how big of a gap there is between them and the average person, it can be reasonably assumed that they are likely to insufficiently communicate about the subject they are an expert in with the general audience. And of course, in some cases, complex things simply cannot be fully explained quickly or in comprehensive terms to individuals who are not experts themselves. It's seemingly become more and more common to have an opinion about nearly everything. Maybe it's always been this way. Maybe having access to all the world's information, but only enough time to read the headlines and the incentive to still leave a comment, has exacerbated this human tendency. Whatever the case, because of this, and in combination with the Dunning-Kruger effect, some of the voices we hear the most of are the least qualified, useful, or accurate. They are, rather, voices of confidence and charisma, not nuance and care. The right voices, rather, are often quieter, harder to parse, or still looking for the right words and means to express themselves. It's natural to want to have a voice that is heard. It's desirable to be perceived, liked, followed, impactful. Being a voice of change and impact is a noble goal. But sometimes the greatest impact is silence. Does the world really need more voices? Or does the world need more careful voices? Of course, the irony here, being a voice that is not silent, is not lost. But the point here is not merely about being silent outright. It is about being carefully noisy, at least attempting to be. It's impossible to have no opinions, but it is possible to have less, or be more careful around how we hold the ones we do. We can overcome it more often with a certain kind of awareness and attitude. By more regularly being silent, by being willing to be a nobody, to let our voice, our presence, our existence not always be involved, we can perhaps be a victim of the effect less and be on the right side of the effect more. In truth, the average person is well-read and experienced in a relatively small quantity of things, at best. We don't need to be in more than that. We shouldn't try or pretend to be. After a certain point, the quantity of opinions one holds is almost always inversely proportional to the quality and accuracy of them. We will inevitably often fail at correctly making the distinction for ourselves, and knowing which areas we belong in and which of our opinions deserve sharing. But that's okay. The goal here is simply to try our best. Ultimately, the Dunning-Kruger effect is a continual sliding scale that follows us through life. As long as we take on new endeavors, new challenges, new goals, we will be incompetent in certain areas. And as long as we are incompetent, we will be partially ignorant to the true degree of our incompetence. But as long as we continue to learn and grow, we will also uncover new knowledge, and we will continue to realign our self-perception with our actual abilities. Life is a continuous cycle of realizing how little you knew, how much you were wrong, and how complex things really are. And then, realizing it again.